Welcome back to Mo's Minute. I apologize for my absence, um, but I want to make it up to you with a really cool video. So we're here at the grave of Charles Howard, who owned a horse, and we're going to talk about that. So Charles Howard, if you do not know from the movie or the book that the movie was based on, was the owner of Seabiscuit. Yes, that Seabiscuit. And was he kind of came into the horse trade unexpectedly. He he was let me preface this by saying that he was very much like a man of opportunity, and he wanted to make it on his own. He was really good at that, by the way. And so he started repairing bikes. And he owned a bike shop on Van Ness, like right at the start of Auto Row in the city. And one day, business was slow, and a guy came in with a car that he was having trouble, or a carriage at this point, that he was having trouble functioning or working. I don't know what was wrong with it, but it wasn't working right. And he was like, "Hey, can you fix it?" And Howard's like, yeah. And he didn't really know what to do, but he figured it out. And anyway, flash forward a bit to the 1906 earthquake. And he was one of like three people in the city with a functioning car. He had three cars at that time, Buicks, that worked, and he rented them out to people for people to use to get out of the city or carry wounded people to hospitals. So talk about a man of enterprise, right? And so then he got more into cars. He had a ranch. Well, it's still there. It's called Howard's Ranch in Willits, and Seabiscuit is buried there. We'll talk about that later. There's a lot of controversy about that. So we'll talk about that later. But he had a ranch up in Willits, and that had stables, and he kept the cars in the stables. And his son, in 1926, I'm kind of jumping back and forth here. He was a private man, which you would not know based on the movie, but he was a private man, so we're just gonna jump all over here. So yeah, he had this ranch in Willits, and the cars were kept on the ranch, and he was a successful car dude. And in 1926, his son died in a car accident, and that was Frank Howard. He is also buried in here. And after that, he didn't really want anything to do with cars. But he always kind of had an interest in horse racing, and his son Lindsay owned a horse racing track down, I think, in Santa Ana, I think. So, he went down there to watch some horse racing, and that's where he met his second wife, because his first wife left him after Frank died. And so that's where he met his second wife. And he also had this friend who was a horse trainer, and that was Tom Smith. They called him Silent Tom, because neither one of these guys liked to talk. Like, literally, both of them were super quiet, to the point where Howard's descendants were like, "How are you going to have Howard and Tom Smith in a movie together? Like, doesn't there need to be dialogue in the movie?" That's why Charles Howard seemed to be a lot more gregarious in the movie, because, they needed dialogue. So yeah, he had this friend who was this horse trainer, Tom Smith, and Tom Smith had his eye on this horse that was kind of all over the place, like a really pretty horse, but just kind of had an attitude and didn't really take criticism too well. And that horse was Seabiscuit. And so Tom Smith bought Seabiscuit because Howard wanted him to. And they're like, "Wait, maybe we could get this horse into racing." And, well, long story short, they did. And so, yeah, Howard was the owner of Seabiscuit. And he loved that horse. He really loved that horse. Seabiscuit died in 1947. Howard died in 1950. They weren't really long without each other. And so the ranch up in Willits had, after they bought Seabiscuit, because they owned other horses. Like, Seabiscuit's the only one they're really known for, but there were other horses up there. But after they bought Seabiscuit, they moved all the cars out of the barn, as they show in the movie, and actually brought horses back in there. And that's how they got into the horse racing industry, was all because of Seabiscuit. And Seabiscuit was successful, and his offspring was pretty successful as well. And he came from a good lineage horse-wise. Um, so yeah, and then he married again in 1932. He married Marcella Howard, and so Marcella Howard's sister was married to Charles Howard's son. Yeah, Charles's second wife was his daughter-in-law's sister. So there's that. But they had a successful marriage, and so anyway, Howard died in 1950 of a heart attack. The ranch is still in Willits, and it's owned by, the family gave up ownership. I think it's owned by the Seabiscuit Foundation. Okay, I think they're about to turn on the sprinklers. Oh, okay. Well, we're gonna finish this up here then. So yeah, it's owned by the Seabiscuit Foundation, and Seabiscuit is buried somewhere on the property. No one exactly knows where. Um, it was under a tree, and only the family knew where it was. And then they like paved over that tree, so now the grave might be in the parking lot. No one's really sure. Um, but yeah, Howard was a private man who was devoted to his horse, Seabiscuit. And yeah, he died in 1950. He's buried here with his parents and his son, Frank. Um, and maybe someday we'll find out exactly where Seabiscuit's buried, because I'd like to see it. So there was a horse there, there was a horse there, very much so. There was a statue of the horse there, but they moved it to the arena that Lindsay Howard owned. And then now it's at the Horse Racing Hall of Fame. So, but yeah, so that is brief information about Charles Howard, the man who owned the horse.